I came home after a conference, tired but proud, and the garage was empty. No Lexus, just a note in my dad's handwriting. We'll explain later. Trust us. They'd sold my $63,000 car without asking, without telling me. And I found out through an Instagram post of my sister sipping cocktails in Santorini. They said it was just sitting there. They said I wouldn't mind. I was the successful one, the dependable one. But this time, I didn't stay quiet. I'm not just the daughter they stole from. I'm an educator, an advocate for financial autonomy, and this time I brought receipts. If you've ever felt like your family treated your boundaries like optional suggestions, this video is for you. I'll show you exactly how I reclaimed what was mine, legally and emotionally. No more guilt, no more silence. Because when I sat across from them at that breakfast table, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I said, I'm not breaking the family. I'm just refusing to keep it stitched together alone. And if you've ever been there, watch this before silence becomes your default setting. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments. And if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way I can send you a special greeting. Now let's start the story together. I didn't notice the garage was empty at first. I'd only just gotten home, shoes in one hand, my tote bag slipping from the other. Still buzzing from the panel discussion in San Francisco, still replaying the closing remarks I'd given to a room of graduate students and skeptical faculty. 3 days of talking about autonomy and literature, 3 days of feeling like myself. I was tired, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind you earn. I reached for the pegboard by the kitchen entrance. The keys weren't there. Strange, I thought. I always hung them after I parked. Habit, like brushing my teeth or double knotting my laces. My Lexus was more than a car. I'd saved for 6 years to buy it. Chose the color myself, celestial silver. Chose the model after test driving 15. It was mine in a way few things ever had been. Instead of keys, there was a note in my father's handwriting. We'll explain later. Trust us. I read it once. Twice. Then I walked barefoot through the living room, heart thudding like something had gone terribly wrong but hadn't yet shown its face. Past the framed photos of Rebecca smiling at prom, Rebecca at her first job, Rebecca on a boat in Capri. Past the smell of lavender from the guest room, where Mom kept sachets in every drawer like grief in perfume form. In the kitchen, they were drinking tea. Just that. Calmly. Like I hadn't just stepped into a different universe. Mom looked up first. Her smile was small and unreadable. Welcome home, sweetheart. Dad offered a nod, eyes dropping back to his cup. My voice came out slower than I expected. Where's my car? Mom set her teacup down with an exhale, as if she'd been preparing for this moment all day. We sold it. The words didn't land. They floated somewhere in the room, absurd and unfinished. You... What? I asked. She kept her tone even, warm even. Rebecca needed the support. The clinic didn't cover all the costs, and she's been through so much. We thought, well, it was just sitting there. It wasn't just sitting there, I said, sharper now. I drove it to the airport 3 days ago. Dad cleared his throat but said nothing. Of course he didn't. I didn't wait for more. My feet moved before my mind could catch up. I turned, walked to the guest room, closed the door softly, sat on the edge of the bed that used to be mine when I lived here, and only then did I let myself feel it. Everything all at once, the confusion, the betrayal, the weird sense that I'd just been erased. I opened Instagram. Rebecca had posted just an hour ago, a shot of her on a sunlit terrace in Santorini, hair braided, face glowing. The caption read, "Taking a leap, healing in Greece. Jacques grateful, reset." I stared at it for a long time, unsure whether to laugh or scream. That car had been more than transportation. It was security, independence. It had gotten me through rainy nights and bad dates and last-minute lectures. It had been there when my parents hadn't been. I reached into my overnight bag and pulled out my phone. Jasmine answered on the second ring. "Hey, you back already?" I couldn't speak. I just breathed into the line. "Nat?" she said softer. "Are you okay?" I blinked at the ceiling, trying to make the room stop spinning. They sold it. My car. Just sold it. What? For Rebecca, I said. Apparently she needed the support, and the keys were just gone. There was silence on the other end, then Jasmine's voice flat and clear. "That's theft." "It's family," I whispered, even though I didn't believe it. Another pause. "You want me to come over?" "No," I said. "No, I don't want them to see you right now. I don't want them to see anything." I held the phone to my chest for a while after we hung up. The guest room light was still broken. It flickered when I leaned back against the pillow. My keychain, the little metal cancer symbol Grandma gave me when I got my license, wasn't on the pegboard. It was probably tossed somewhere, or worse, handed to Rebecca like it meant nothing. I thought about Grandma's hands, the way she always said, "Honey, a car isn't just metal. It's where your life waits between moments." She was the only one who saw me, the only one who ever taught me to claim space. Outside, the evening had gone soft. The streetlight cast long shadows down the driveway. I stood there by the window, phone in hand, staring at where my car should have been. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was just another object in this house. Not a person, not a daughter, just replaceable. They didn't sneak around at night. They didn't wear masks. They just decided I didn't need it anymore. The next morning felt deceptively normal. Blue sky, bird song, and the hum of sprinklers on a neighbor's lawn. The kind of day that should have begun with pancakes or a grocery run, not quietly calculating what had been taken from me. I sat at the kitchen table in the same chair I always used when I visited, facing the window where sunlight slanted in across the tile. My laptop was open. The coffee my mom poured for me an hour earlier had long gone cold. I hadn't touched it. The screen glowed with the search results I didn't want to see. I'd typed the VIN from my Lexus into a database Jasmine had recommended. And there it was. The vehicle transfer. From Daniel Brooks to a local dealership. Dated 3 days ago. I didn't even bother blinking the sting away. The dealership's name was one I recognized. They'd once called me for a trade-in offer. I stared at the phone number before finally dialing. A man answered. Friendly enough. "Yes, we did handle that RX 500H, he said. "Came in last week, sold pretty fast. Those hybrids don't last long on the lot." I cleared my throat. "Do you have the seller on file?" "Sure. Daniel Brooks." He read it like it was the most normal thing in the world. I thanked him, hung up, closed my laptop. My stomach felt tight, like someone had hooked it with fishing wire and was slowly, steadily pulling. I stood and went to the guest room. My old room, except now it had been repainted beige and staged for no one. My receipts were still in the travel pouch I kept in my carry-on. Insurance records, bank transfers, purchase documents. Everything with my name. Everything tying me to that car. Everything they ignored. I laid the papers out on the comforter like puzzle pieces, hoping for some corner edge that would help me make sense of the picture. But all it did was confirm what I already knew. 6 years of saving, strategizing, scrimping, gone in 3 days. From down the hall, I heard footsteps. "Morning," Dad said casually as he stepped into the kitchen. I followed him without thinking. He opened the fridge, pulled out cream cheese, and set 2 slices of bread in the toaster. I stood in the doorway. "Why did you do it?" He glanced over, not startled, not ashamed. "Do what?" I held up my phone, the dealership's name still on the screen. "You sold my car." Daniel sighed. Not guilty, just inconvenienced. "Sweetheart, you always said you were independent. We assumed you wouldn't mind." "I wouldn't mind?" My voice cracked. That was a $63,000 vehicle that I bought, with my money. The toaster popped. He ignored it. I stepped forward. "Do you even understand what that car meant to me?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "We were going to explain, Natalie." "You left a note," I said. "A note. Not even a conversation." There was no apology in his eyes, only a quiet discomfort, as if the worst part of this whole thing was me confronting him about it, as if being confronted was the real offense. Rebecca needed to get away, he added, quieter now. It was a family decision. Family. As if I wasn't part of that word anymore. I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. Back in the guest room, my phone buzzed. Jasmine. I answered. No hello, just silence for a moment. You find anything? She asked gently. They sold it, transferred the title. Rebecca's in Greece. Jasmine didn't ask how I knew. I'd shown her the Instagram post the night before. And your parents? They're having toast. Jasmine let out a soft, bitter laugh. You know what this is, right? What? They didn't just steal your car. They stole the assumption that you'd stay quiet. Again. Again. That word echoed, because this wasn't the first time. Years ago, it was the emergency dental bill Rebecca had, but I was the one whose savings account temporarily covered it. Temporarily became forever. I sat back against the wall and stared at the ceiling. There was a water stain near the vent. I'd never noticed it before. I want to scream, I whispered. Then scream, Jasmine said, but document everything first. That was the thing about Jasmine. She always let me feel things but never let me drown in them. I went back to the table, gathered my paperwork, and started scanning. Receipts, titles, registration emails, bank statements. I created a shared Google Drive and sent Jasmine the link. I labeled every file with the same cold precision I once used for grant applications. Then I opened Instagram again. I shouldn't have, but there was a new post. A close-up of Rebecca's bare feet in the sand, a cocktail in hand. You said she's not using it much anyway. The caption was part of a message thread. Rebecca had posted it as a screenshot in her story, tagging Mom in a heart. My hands went cold. Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I bet you can't guess what's coming next. But before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless. They hadn't just assumed I wouldn't mind. They discussed it like it was casual, like I wasn't even a person to consult, just a name on a title they thought didn't matter. I called Jasmine again. You still there? Still here. What do you think I should do? You already know, she said. You just needed someone else to say it. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the tear roll off my chin. I wasn't angry they didn't ask. I was angry they thought they didn't have to. They say family comes first. But somehow, I was never part of that equation. The sun filtered gently through the lemon tree leaves, casting dappled shadows across the patio. The table was set like it always had been when I was growing up. Pancakes stacked high, a ceramic bowl of fresh-cut strawberries, napkins folded into triangles the way Cynthia insisted. And yet the silence around that table could have cracked bone. I sat down last, not because I was late, but because I needed to arrive with certainty. In my hand, a navy blue folder. Inside, the truth. Labeled tabs, printed screenshots, notarized documents. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about what had happened and what I could prove. No one spoke at first. Daniel cleared his throat and reached for the syrup like this was any other Saturday. Cynthia placed a hand over her cup, letting the steam rise into her face like she was meditating. I laid the folder down. Her eyes flicked to it. "What's that?" she asked, already knowing. "Proof," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It simply was. Proof of ownership, resale records, bank activity, the VIN, the bill of sale, and a statement from the dealership confirming who signed the title transfer. She didn't open it right away. Her hands hovered, then pulled back. "Why are you doing this to us, Natalie?" There it was. Not, "We're sorry." Not, "We made a mistake." Just a polished blade, wrapped in guilt. "I'm not doing anything to you," I said. "I'm doing this for me." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Let's not make this ugly," he said, as if I had brought ugliness into the house, as if the garage had emptied itself. "You took my car," I said quietly. "You sold it without telling me, and you used the money for Rebecca's trip." "She needed it," Cynthia said, finally opening the folder and flipping through a few pages. "She was in a bad place." I nodded. "And I'm in a place where people don't steal from me anymore." They blinked. Cynthia's face twitched slightly, guilt or just indigestion. "You always said you wanted to help your sister," she offered. "I said I wanted to be part of the family," I replied. "I never said I wanted to fund it." She didn't respond. I watched her eyes scan the bank statement, pause at the withdrawal. The number, $63,000, sat in crisp black ink. I let it hang in the air with the scent of maple syrup. Daniel tried a different route. "We thought, you're so successful now, we assumed that I wouldn't care?" I finished for him. "That I wouldn't notice?" He looked down. He didn't deny it. "I want it back," I said. "The full amount. $63,000. No conditions, no installment plans, no deferrals." "You're serious?" Cynthia said, like I'd just asked for the deed to the house. "Yes, and you have until Monday. After that, it's court, not conversation." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. And I didn't ask for understanding. I made a statement, a boundary, a final line. Cynthia leaned back, hand on her chest. "You know, I've been having those heart palpitations again." There it was, the card she always played when logic ran dry, her health, her delicate nerves, the stress I supposedly inflicted, but not this time. I pulled out my phone and opened Jasmine's voice memo. I'd asked her to record it that morning just in case I froze up. Her voice filled the air, calm and certain. "This is your line in the sand. Don't let them redraw it for you." I watched them both. Daniel looked like he wanted to speak but didn't know where to begin. Cynthia just stared at the voice memo like it had betrayed her. "I didn't want this," I said. "I didn't come home expecting a fight." "But you brought one," Cynthia snapped. "No," I replied. "You started it. I'm just refusing to lose this time." We sat there for a long moment. The birds, strangely quiet earlier, began chirping again. A breeze stirred the edges of the folder. Daniel looked at the strawberries, then at me. "There has to be another way," he said. "There was," I said softly. "It was honesty." I stood up. The sun was warmer now, higher in the sky. My coffee had gone cold, untouched again. But something inside me had shifted. I didn't feel small anymore, or guilty, or like the outsider who had to earn her place at the table. I didn't want to fight, but I was finally ready for one if they brought it. You think speaking up will bring peace, but in my family, silence was the only currency they respected. 2 days had passed since I'd set the folder on the patio table, since I'd told them the truth wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a contract, a timeline, a consequence. Now I was back in my apartment, small, clean, with walls that still smelled faintly of sea air and jasmine detergent. The sky outside hung low and gray, matching the mood that had settled in my chest. I hadn't unpacked yet. My suitcase leaned in the hallway like it was too polite to interrupt. The first voicemail came at 6:14 a.m. "Hi, honey, it's Mom. Just checking in. I didn't sleep last night. You've really hurt your mother, you know. But I forgive you. Call me back." Click. I didn't. Instead, I scrolled past a dozen unread messages. From cousins I hadn't spoken to in months, a church friend of hers who now suddenly remembered me, even Aunt Linda, who once told me I was a little intense for a child. "Can't you just let this go?" one text read. "She's your sister. You've always been the one with the good job, the stable life. Why make a mess now?" I sat on the couch, phone in hand, the silence pressing in from all sides. Even the ceiling fan, usually a steady hum, seemed hesitant to spin. Then came Jasmine. Thank God for Jasmine, with arms full of groceries and eyes sharp with recognition. She didn't ask if she could come in. She knew I'd forgotten to eat. "I brought those chickpea wraps you like," she said, setting down a canvas bag, "and oat milk. Your fridge is a crime scene. I managed a small laugh, but it cracked midway. Let me guess, she continued. The guilt Olympics are in full swing? I nodded, tossing my phone onto the coffee table like it burned. Cynthia left a voicemail before sunrise. She's not sorry, Jasmine said flatly, unpacking spinach and berries. She's just scared of consequences. Outside, traffic moved in soft waves. Inside, I wrapped a blanket around myself like armor. Jasmine poured me tea. Green jasmine, of course, and finally looked me full in the face. They didn't expect you to push back, she said. Your silence was convenient. Now it's expensive. I reached for the mug, but missed. My hand trembled more than I expected. I keep thinking maybe I overreacted, I whispered. No, she said gently. You reacted? That's not the same. On instinct, I opened Instagram, thumb hovering over the little pink icon I'd promised myself I'd ignore. And there she was, Rebecca, standing on a balcony in Santorini, blue sea, white walls, a breeze caught just right in her hair. The caption? Some people just don't get what really matters. Healing, Chin family first. The comments poured in. So lucky your fam supports your journey. Love this for you. Deserve every bit of this piece, Queen. I stared at her smile. It looked polished, practiced. I used to believe it. She's framing it like I'm jealous, I said quietly. Jasmine didn't answer. She didn't need to. I could feel the answer in the way she stood still, like silence was the only kindness she had left to offer. The next message was from Aunt Rachel, who hadn't called me in 5 years. Hey, sweetie, just wanted to say, I know things feel messy now, but family's forever, right? Maybe just meet them halfway? Halfway. Like that's what this was. A disagreement. A detour. Not theft. Not erasure. I stood up, pacing the room in socks, the floor cool beneath my feet. I avoided the mirror by the entryway. I didn't want to look myself in the eye and see hesitation. On the kitchen counter sat a copy of the legal form, quiet, waiting. I'd printed it last night but hadn't touched it since. It looked harmless, like paperwork for a dentist appointment. But it wasn't. It was my line in the sand. I sat down again, sipped tea, stared at the form. Then I blocked Cynthia's number. Not out of rage, out of preservation. I didn't owe her access to me, not anymore. There was a moment, just one, where everything went still. The fan stopped creaking. The cars outside paused at a light. Even the fridge, usually humming in protest, went quiet. I closed my eyes, whispered to no one in particular, not again. And then Jasmine, bless her, broke the stillness. I don't know how this ends, she said, but I do know this. You're not breaking the family. You're just refusing to keep it stitched together alone. Her words found a home somewhere between my ribs. I folded the blanket tighter around me. I wasn't burning bridges, I murmured. I was just done pretending they weren't already on fire. She didn't say anything after that. She didn't have to. The silence, for once, felt like mine. They didn't say sorry. They said, let's talk. It was a Saturday morning, one of those rare San Diego days when the sky felt more like Seattle. Soft gray light, rain tapping gently against every surface. I arrived 5 minutes late on purpose. The cafe was exactly halfway between my apartment and theirs, neutral ground, or so I'd hoped. It was small, locally owned, succulents on every table, handwritten chalkboard menus, the kind of place that tried to be warm without asking too many questions. As I stepped inside, I caught sight of them, Cynthia and Daniel, already seated near the window, huddled over ceramic mugs like diplomats negotiating weather. I wore my soft beige trench coat, the one I reserved for uncomfortable meetings and long walks after. Symbolic armor, maybe, not that it helped. My heart pounded anyway. They both looked up when I approached. Cynthia offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Daniel's posture was rigid, like he'd rehearsed being calm, but hadn't made peace with it yet. "Natalie," Cynthia said softly, "you look lovely." "You always did dress professionally," Daniel added, "even as a teenager." I didn't answer. I pulled out the chair across from them and sat down slowly. My fingers rested in my lap, where they couldn't see how tightly I was holding my own hands together. Cynthia reached into her bag and pulled out a slim envelope, cream-colored, no branding, slightly wrinkled, like it had been clutched for hours before being handed over. "We talked about everything," she said gently. "We want to make this right. No more misunderstandings." Daniel slid the envelope across the table, tapping it once as if to bless it. "There's a check inside," he said, "the full amount, $63,000. We went over every cent." I stared at it. The weight of paper always amazed me, how something so light could feel like stone. "We want to move forward," Cynthia continued, "but we also hope you'll agree to keep this private. Just family business. No need to involve outside parties." She reached into her folder and pulled out another sheet. One page, neatly printed. A family agreement, she called it. I skimmed the first paragraph. "By accepting the funds listed in the attached check, the undersigned agrees to refrain from discussing the transaction with any third party, including but not limited to legal representation, digital platforms, or future financial claims. A hush contract, not a resolution." I placed the paper back on the table and looked up. "This isn't closure," I said. "This is silence for sale." Daniel cleared his throat. "We just want to avoid escalation. This has already caused enough stress." Cynthia's voice dropped to a near whisper. "You've always been so mature. You've never made scenes. That's what made you special." "No," I said. "What made me special was believing in boundaries no one else respected." Silence settled in like fog, thick and unwelcome. "We're trying," Cynthia said again, voice tremulous now. "We're trying to move forward. This is hard for us, too." "I already moved," I replied. "You're trying to catch up." I reached for the envelope, held it between two fingers like it might bite. "You don't get to buy my silence," I said, "but I will take what's mine." Cynthia gasped softly. Her hands fluttered over her mug, unsure of what to hold on to. Daniel spoke again, this time quieter. "We're still your parents." "Then maybe you should have acted like it." The check trembled in my grip, not from fear, but from something else, something like release. "I won't sue you," I said calmly. "Not if this ends here, but I also won't lie for you. I won't pretend this never happened." They both nodded, reluctantly, defeated, but still trying to control the narrative even as it unraveled. I stood. Behind me, a young couple laughed over avocado toast. Life went on. It always does. The rain hadn't stopped, and I hadn't brought an umbrella. I didn't care. I stepped outside, envelope tucked beneath my coat. The wind smelled like wet pavement and rosemary from the garden shop next door. By the time I got home, I still hadn't opened the envelope. It sat on my desk like a question I didn't want to answer. Later that evening, I played the voice memo Jasmine had sent me right after the meeting. I hadn't told her what happened, not yet, but she knew me well enough to record something anyway. Her voice filled the room. "You didn't fold," she said. "You finalized. That's not anger, it's closure, and don't let them tell you otherwise." I replayed it 3 times. The check remained sealed. I wasn't sure when or if I'd deposit it, but I knew one thing for certain. What happened today wasn't forgiveness. It was the receipt. There was a small box on my doorstep, no return address. But the handwriting? I'd know it anywhere. It had been a month, one full cycle of workshops, new beginnings and slow mornings that didn't start with voicemails or legal threats. I had learned to let the silence be a kindness, not a warning. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was space. That Saturday, the afternoon sun spilled through the wide windows of the community center where I now taught. The light made the laminate floors glow like they were something more expensive than they were. It felt right. There were 6 girls in folding chairs, some barely out of high school, some already working second jobs. I stood at the front near the whiteboard where I'd scrawled the title in green marker. Lines in the sand, money, family, and boundaries. They took notes, asked questions. Most of them didn't know how to open a bank account without asking permission from someone else. Some still handed over their paychecks to a relative each week, just to help. One girl raised her hand, shy but steady. "What if saying no feels like betrayal?" she asked. Her voice cracked just a little, like she was quoting something someone once accused her of. I nodded, not fast, not to reassure her, but to let the question sit. "Then it's the kind of betrayal that saves you," I said. "And sometimes, saving yourself means letting someone else be uncomfortable with your boundaries." She wrote that down. When the session ended, Jasmine helped me stack the chairs. She was the one who came up with the workshop name, who insisted we print flyers, who made me promise not to cancel it last minute out of nerves. She said boundaries were like muscles, worth training, even when they shook. "You did good," she whispered as we locked the doors. Later that afternoon, I drove home, parked in the same spot I always did, the one where my Lexus used to rest, back before it was quietly sold to fund someone else's healing trip. Now it was just an empty rectangle of pavement. I didn't flinch walking past it. At my doorstep sat a box, plain brown, hand-taped, no logo, no postage, just a name written in cursive, mine. And the handwriting, I hadn't seen it in weeks, but I hadn't forgotten it either. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I made tea. Not the kind Cynthia used to steep, but something Jasmine introduced me to. Peppermint and dried orange peel, warm and sharp at once. I poured it into a chipped mug from the center, the kind that didn't match anything else in my cupboard. I liked it better that way. The box waited. When I finally lifted the lid, I found my old cancer keychain resting on a bed of tissue paper. The silver was scratched, dulled at the edges, like it had been scraped across glove compartments and tossed into purses without care. But I remembered buying it at 17, when my grandmother and I wandered through a weekend fair downtown. She had smiled when I chose it. "Cancer girls always carry too much weight," she'd said. "Keep something light with you just in case." Beneath the keychain was a folded note, 4 words. "I thought you might want this. Mom." That was it. No apology, no explanation, just a relic, a gesture. I held the keychain for a moment, then placed it back in the box and slid the lid shut. The cardboard didn't resist. I carried it to the drawer beneath the bookshelf, the one with half-finished journals and expired coupons. It fit there just fine. Some things didn't need a display case. Some things were allowed to be past tense. Later that night, I updated my bio on the center's website. It used to say, Natalie Brooks, MBA, grant writer, curriculum designer. Now it said, Natalie Brooks, educator, advocate. Boundaries are a form of love. I closed the tab without hitting, save a second time. No hesitation. As the sun dipped below the edge of the building, the room filled with that golden hush, when everything slows down before the lights flick on. I stood at the window and watched the shadows move across the sidewalk like they were just visiting. I didn't need closure in a ribbon. I gave it to myself, with scissors, and if this story spoke to you and you believe in quiet victories, personal growth, and stories that matter, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more ahead, and I'd be honored to share it with you.